Hare Krishna. Sham Sharadava Nalalida Loka Tranaya Karuna Gana Ganatam Samsaradava Nalalida Loka Tranaya Karuna Gana Ganatam Praptasya Kalyanam Gunanavasya Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Praptasya Kalyanam Gunanavasya Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam. Bande Guru Shri Charanara. Mahaprabhu ki tananita gita vaditra madhyam Manasurasena. Tananita gita vaditra madhyam Manasurasena. Romancha kampasru taranga bhajo Bande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam. Bande Guru Shri Charanara. Shri Vigrahara Dhana Nityanana Shringara Tanma Niramajanado. Shri Juktasya bhaktamsa niyunjatapi Bande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam. Bande Guru Shri Charanara. Chaturvidha Shri Bhagavat Prasada Satana Triptan Hari Bhakta Sangha. Chaturvidha Shri Bhagavat Prasada Satana Triptan Kridvaiva Triptin Bhajata Shadeva. Bande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam. Shiradikama Dabayara Para Madhura Leela Gunarupa Namna. Shiradikama Madhura Leela. Pratikshana Swa Dhanalalupasya Bande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam. Dhanalalupasya Bande Guru Ne kunjayono Rati Kelisidhai Jayali Bhir Yukti Apekshaniya. Ne kunjayono Tatrati Daksha Ativala Bhasya Bande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam. Sakshadhari Dena Shamasta Shashri Uktastathava Vyata Eva Sadvi. Sakshadhari Dena Shashri Uktastathava Kintu Prabhoja Priya Eva Tasya Bande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam. Yasya Prasada Bhagavat Prasado Yasya prasadam nagati kutapi. Yasya prasadam sadam. Yasya prasadam. Dayam stovam tasya yashasti sandhyam. Bande Gurashi Charanaro Vrindam. Dayam stovam tasya yashasti sandhyam. Bande Gurashi Charanaro. Dayam stovam tasya yashasti sandhyam. Bande Gurashi Charanaro Vrindam. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Iti Namine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pachatyare Shatarine Namaste Shunyavadi Pachatyade Shata. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Shri Krishna Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Shri Krishna Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Rama, Hariyaraye Nama Krishna Jadavaye Nama Jadavaye Madhavaya Kesavaye Nama Gopal Govindaram Shrimadusudam Giridhari Gopinath Madana Mohan Shri Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Sita Hari Guru Vaishnava Bhagavata Gita Shri Rupa Sanatan Bhatta Raghuna Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasaraguna Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Hare Rama, Shri Radha Nila Madhav, Radha Nila Madhav, Radhe. Jaya Jagannath, Jaya Baladeva, Jaya Subhadrama, Jaya Sudarshan Chakra. Jaya Sitaram, 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 Jaya Lakshman Hanuman. Nitai Gaur Haribo, 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 Nitai Gaur Haribo, 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 Nitai Gaur Pramanande Haribo. Jai Mishra Para Paramansa Prabhu, Bhagacharya, ISKCON Pratishtha Bhiviti Samstapakachar Vaishnav Ceremony. Gaura Priyajana Krishna Prema Bhaktidatta Patita Pavana, His Divine Grace, Abhacharvina Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ji Ki Jai, Shri Gauriya Guru Varga Patitu Udhar Ki Jai, Shri Rupa Sanatana Bhattara Gunata Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Gunasat, Goswami Prabhu Ki Jai, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ji Ki Jai, Jayananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai, Prem Se Kaho Se Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar, Shubhasari Gaur Bhakta Vrindi Ki Jai, Jai Param Dayal Se Nityananda Prabhu Ki Jai, Premanam Sankirtane Ka Janaka Prema Purushottama Sachinandan, Shriman Gauranga Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Gaur Hari Mavrana Avatar Ki Jai, Golokera Pramadhan Hari Nam Sankirtan Yaga Ki Jai, Yoga Dharma Hare Krishna Mahamantra Ki Jai, Brihat Nidanga Transcendental Book Distribution Seva Ki Jai, Shri Radha Krishna Gopagopina Radha Kun Samakun Giriraj Govardhan Ki Jai, Shri Vrajabhum Vrindavan Mathurdham Ki Jai, Dear Lordship Shri Radha Nila Madhava Ki Jai, Shri Mayapurna Madhip Ekachakra Dham Ki Jai, Paramakaruna Shri Gaur Nitai Ki Jai, Shri Purushottam Ketra Jagannath Puridham Ki Jai, Shri Shri Jagannath Swami Baladev Prabhu, Srimati Subhadra Devi Sudarshan Chakra Bhagavan Ki Jai, Bhakti Sarva Vigna Vinashana Karan Shingare Bhagavan Ki Jai, Jaganga Mai Jamuna Mai Ki Jai, Tulsi Maharani Vrindi Devi Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Bolo Shri Maturadharani Ki Jai, Shamaveta Bhakta Vrindi Ki Jai, Nitai Gaurari Pramanande, all glory to the assembly bodies, all glory to the assembly bodies, all glory to the assembly bodies, all glory to Shri Shri Guru Shri Guru.
Namaste Narasimhaya,
Namaste Narasimhaya,
Namaste Narasimhaya, Namaste Narasimhaya, Prahlada Ladadaine, Hiranyakashi Purvakshaha, Shrilatam Kanakhalaye, To Narasimho Parato Narasimho, Ito Narasimho Parato Narasimho, यतो यतो यामि ततो नरसिंहो तो यतो यामि ततो नरसिंहो बहिर्नरसिंहो हृदये नरसिंहो नरसिंहो हृदये नरसिंहो नरसिंहमदिं शरणं प्रपदे नरसिंहमदिं शरणं प्रपदे तव करकमलवरे नखा अद्भुतशृङ्गा ललिता हिरण्यकशिपू तनुभृङ्गा केशवधृता नरहरिरूपा जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे तव करकमलवरे नाका अद्भुतशृङ्गा ललिता हिरण्यकशिपू तनुभृङ्गा केशवधृता नरहरिरूपा जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश केशवधृता नरहरिरूपा जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे केशवधृता नरहरिरूपा जय जगदीश हरे जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय नरसिंहदेव जय नरसिंहदेव जय नरसिंहदेव जय नरसिंहदेव ओ नरसिंहदेव जय नरसिंहदेव जय नरसिंहदेव जय नरसिंहदेव जय प्रहलाद महाराज जय प्रहलाद महाराज जय प्रहलाद महाराज जय प्रहलाद महाराज प्रहलाद महाराज जय प्रहलाद महाराज जय प्रहलाद महाराज जय प्रहलाद महाराज नित्य गौरा हरि बोल हरि बोल हरि बोल नित्य गौरा हरि बोल हरि बोल हरि बोल हरि बोल नित्य गौरा हरि बोल जय जय प्रभुपाद 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 जय जय प्रभुपाद जय जय प्रभुपाद 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 जय जय प्रभुपाद जय जय गुरुदेव 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 जय जय गुरुदेव जय गुरुदेव 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 जय जय गुरुदेव।
Shri Vrindai Tulasi Devi. Shri Vrindai Tulasi Devi Priyayai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Sattvatai Namo Namaha. Vrindai Tulasi Devi Priyayai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Sattvatai Namo Namaha. Vrindayai Tulasi Devi Priyayai Kesava Satya Krishna Bhakti Prade Devi Sattvatai Namo Namaha. Shrimati Tulasi Maharani Vrinda Devi ki.
Tulasi Krishna Preyasi Namo Namaha.
Tulasi Krishna Preyasi Namo Namaha.
Namo Namaha. Tulasi Krishna Preyasi Namo Namaha.
Tulasi Krishna Preyasi Namo Namaha.
Radha Krishna Prema Pavo Abhilasi.
Radha Krishna Seva Pava Abhilasi.
Radha Krishna Seva Pavo Abhilasi.
Radha Krishna Seva Pava Abhilasi.
Je tomar sharan loy tara bancha purna hoy.
Je tumhara sharana tara vancha purna.
Kripa kori koro tare Vrindavana basi.
Tumi kripa kori kara tare Vrindavana vasi.
Moraya Bilas Vilas Kunj Dhiyo Bas.
Moraya Vilas Kunja Diyava.
Nayane Ribo Sada Jugal Ruparasi.
Aminayane Rivo Sada Jugala Ruparasi.
Nivedana dhara Sakiranugata karo.
Nivedana Sakirayano Gatakaro.
Sevadikara diye Karo nij दासी
सेवायारी कर दिए कर निज दासी
ना कृष्ण दासे को ये न मोरा
बिना कृष्ण दास
को
मोरा
श्री राधा गोविंदा प्रेम सदा जिन भासी
श्री राधा गोविंद प्रेम सदा जिन भासी
श्री राधा गोविंदा प्रेम सदा जिन भासी श्री
राधा गोविंद प्रेम सदा जिन भासी
तुलसी कृष्ण प्रेयसी नमो नमः
तुलसी कृष्ण प्रेयसी नमो नमः
यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्म हत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति दक्षिणा पदे पदे
यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्म हत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे
यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्म हत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे
यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्म हत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे
हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे
हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे
जय तुलसी महारानी जय तुलसी महारानी जय तुलसी महारानी जय तुलसी महारानी
जय तुलसी महारानी जय तुलसी महारानी तुलसी महारानी जय तुलसी महारानी
जय वृंदा देवी वृंदा देवी वृंदा देवी जय वृंदा देवी
जय वृंदा देवी वृंदा देवी वृंदा देवी जय वृंदा देवी
जय हरि बोल हरि बोल हरि बोल निताय गौरा हरि बोल
निताय गौरा हरि बोल हरि बोल हरि बोल निताय गौरा हरि बोल
जय जय प्रभुपाद 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 जय जय प्रभुपाद जय
जय प्रभुपाद 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 जय जय प्रभुपाद
जय जय गुरुदेव 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 जय जय गुरुदेव
जय जय गुरुदेव 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 जय जय गुरुदेव Shri Vrindai Tulasi Devi Priyai Kesava Satyam Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Shatavatai Namo Namaha Vrindayai tulasi debai priyayai kesava satya Vishnu bhakti prade devi Satyavattai namo namaha. Vrindayai tulasi debai priyayai kesava satya Krishna Bhakti Prade Devi Shatavatai Namo Namaha. Jai Shrimati Tulasi Maharani Vrinda Devi Ki Jai. O Tulasi, beloved Krishna, I bow before you again and again. My desire to obtain the service of Shri Radha and Krishna. Whoever takes shelter of you, his wishes fulfilled. Bestow your mercy upon him, making resident of Vrindavana. My desire is that you also grant me a residence in pleasure groves of Sri Vrindavan. Thus, within my vision, I will always behold beautiful pastimes of Radha and Krishna. I beg you to make me a follower carried damsels of Raj. Please give me the privilege of devotional service and make me your own maid servant. This very fallen and lowly servant of Krishna prays. May I always swim in love with Shri Radha and Govinda. Shri Mati Tulasi Maharani Vrinda Devi Ki Jai. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Shikhastakam Ki Jai. Chaito Darpana Marjanam Bhavamada Vagnirvapanam Shri Akari Vachandrika Vitaranam Vidya Badhu Jivanam Anandam Buddhivardhanam Pradiparam Purnamrita Swadanam Sarvatmasnam Param Param Vijayate Shri Krishna Sankirtanam Nam Namakari Baudha Isa Sarva Shaktis Tatra Pitaniyamitta Shmarane Nakala Pita Dushitava Kripaya Bhagavan Mamapi Durdhaivam Irishamyajane Nanuraga Trinadapi Sunichena Tarurapi Sashana
Amanina Manadina Kirtaniya Sadhari Adhanam Janam Sundarim Ravitam Vajagadish Kamaye Mama Janmani Janmani Swaye Avata Bhaktir Haitaki Tvaye Ainandatam Jakinkaram Patitam Mam Shame Bhavam Buddhu Vipayata Vapa Pankaja Sridham Chintaya Ainam Galadasruga Gananda Gadasrugaya Chaya Pulakan Chitam Vapukata Tavana Kahane Bhavishyati Yuga Yitam Nimesena Chaksusa Kusatam Govinda Vinayane Askishava Padaratam Ganashnam Adachanam Mandato Purutuvam Yatata Vidata Jurnato Matmananatas to say Eva Napurha Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare cleanses the heart of all the dust accumulated for years. A repeated birth and death. The Sankirtan movement is the prime benediction for humanity. the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss and enables us to fully taste the nectar for which we are always anxious. O my Lord, your holy name alone can render all benediction to living beings, and thus you have hundreds of millions of names like Krishna and Govinda. In these transcendental names you have the best of all your transcendental energies. There are not even hard and fast rules for chanting these names. O my Lord, I have the kindness to enable us to easily approach you by your holy name, but I am so unfortunate that I have no attraction for them. One should chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself lower than a strong tree. One should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer all respect to others. In such state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. Oh, Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want causeless devotion to service birth after birth. Oh, Sattva Maharaj, Nanda Krishna, I'm your eternal servant. Yet somehow or other I've fallen to this ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this death and place me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. Oh my Lord, my eyes be decorated with tears of love, while I constantly when I chant your holy name. When will my voice choke up, and when will the hairs of my body stand on end at the recitation of holy name? Oh Govinda, feeling your separation, I'm considering a moment to be like 12 years or more. Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain, and I'm feeling all vacant and work in your absence. And I know one but Krishna is my Lord, and he shall remain so, even if he cancels me off from life's embrace, or makes me broken-hearted by not being present before him. He is completely free to do anything with him, for he is always my will. Lord, unconditionally. Namah Om Vishnu Padaya Shrimate Bhakti Namaste Saraswati Devi Guruvani Prachani Nirvises.
There are 10 offenses in model chanting the name of
The blasphemy, the proclaim the holy name of the Lord. Consider names of demigods like Lord Shiva, Lord Brahma, the equal names of Lord Vishnu. Disobey the orders of the spiritual master. To blaspheme the Vedic literature, or literature in pursuance of the Vedic version. To consider the glories of chanting Hare Krishna as imagination. To give some interpretation of the holy name of the Lord. To commit sinful activities on the strength of chanting the holy name of the Lord. Consider chanting of Hare Krishna as one of the auspicious ritualistic activities which are offered in Vedas. Fruitive activities of karma kanda. To instruct a faithless person about the glories of the holy name, not have complete faith in chanting holy names, and maintain material attachments even after understanding so many instructions in this matter. It is also an offense to be inattentive while chanting. Every devotee who claims to be Vaishnava is carefully guard against these 10 offenses in order to quickly achieve the desired success. Krishna Prema. Now let us offer our most humble obeisances unto all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord. They are just like desire trees that can fulfill the desires of everyone, and they are full of compassion for the fallen conditioned souls. Vanchikopatarabhischa kripasindubhyevicha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha vaishnava thakur ki jai. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Om Aganyat Timirandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chaksurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manubhistam Shapitam Yena Bhutali Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Bandeham Shri Guru Shri Jatahapachakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamsha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahugana Ragunatan Vitam Tam Sajivam Saidvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishaka Nivitam Sha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutali Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nitinamini Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Paskatya Desatarine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutali Shrimate Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Tinamine Shivasavani Devi Daitaya Kripabdaye Krishna Sambandha Vijnana Dayane Prabhude Namaha Madhur Ujvala Premadya Shri Rupanuga Bhaktida Shri Gora Karuna Shakti Vigrahaya Namostate Namaste Gauravani Shri Murtaye Dinatarine Rupanuga Virudapa Apasiddhanta Dvantaharine Namo Gora Kishoraya Sakshad Vairagya Murtaye Ripalamba Rasambode Padambujayate Namaha Namo Bhakti Vinodaya Satchitanandanamine Gora Shakti Swarupaya Rupanuga Varayate Gora Vir Bhava Bhamistvam Nirdesta Sajjana Priya Vaishnava Sarvabhuma Sri Jagannathayate Namaha Vanchakalpa Turabhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Padayate Krishna Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gaurachase Namaha Panchatattvatmakam Krishnam Bhakta Rupa Swarupakam Bhakta Avataram Bhaktakam Namami Bhakta Saktikam Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Jayatam Suratur Pangur Mama Manda Matergati Matsarva Swapadambujo Radha Madanamohano Divyad Vinduranya Kalpadumadaha Shimad Ratnagara Simhasanastito Shimad Radha Sila Govinda Devo Prastadi Bihi Sevyamanu Smarami Shiman Rasa Rasaram Bivam Sivata Tatastita Karsan Venusvaner Gopir Gopinatakstri Estuna Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanustute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Shri Brahma Samiti Ki Jai Ishwara Parama Krishna Sachitananda Vigraha Anadi Radha Govinda Sarva Karana Karanam Chintamani Prakara Sadmasakalpa Riksha Laksavrite Susurabi Rabipaliantam Lakshmi Sahasra Satam Sambrahma Sevyamanam Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Venum Kvanantam Arabindradaksham Parhavatam Samasitam Buddha Sundarangam Kandarpa Kotikamaniya Vishesa Sobam Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Alola Chandra Sadvanamalya Vamsi Ratnam Gadam Pranayakela Kalavilasam Shamam Tribanga Lalitani Prakasam Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Angani Yasya Sakalendri Vrittimanti Pasyanti Pantikayanti Chiram Jaganti Ananda Chinmaya Sadujvala Vigrahasya Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Advaitam Achutam Anadim Ananta Rupam Adyam Purana Purisham Navayovanam Cha Vedesa Durlabam Adurlabam Atma Bhakto Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Pantastakoti Satavatsara Sampragam Yovayor Tapi Manasomani Pungamanam Sobhyasti Yat Prapadasimya Vichintya Tatve Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Ekopya Sora Chaitam Jagadandakoti Eschati Rasta Jagadanda Chaya Yadanta Adanta Rasta Paramanu Chayantarastam Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yat Bhava Bhavita Diyomana Jasta Taiva Samprapya Rupa Mahimasani Anabusa Sukta Yamevi Nigama Pratitastuvanti Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Ananda Chinmaya Rasa Pratibhavita Bistabirya Evani Jarupa Tayakalabi Goloka Evani Vasata Kilatma Bhutto Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Premanjana Churita Bhakti Vilochanena Santaksa Deva Desu Vilokayanti Yam Shama Sundaram Achintya Gunaswarupam Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Ramadi Murti Sukalani Menitista Nanavataram Akarud Bhuvanesa Kintu Krishna Swayam Samabhavat Paramam Pumam Yo Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yasya Prabha Pavato Jagaranda Koti Koti Svasesa Vasudadi Vibhuti Binam Tad Brahmanis Klamanantam Sesa Bhutam Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Maya Yasya Jagaranda Stani Sute Dragunya Tad Visaya Vidya Vitayamana Sattva Valambi Parasatvam Visuddha Sattvam Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Ananda Chinmaya Rasan Matayamanasu Yaprani Nam Pratifilam Smaratam Upeti Nitya Lilayatena Bhuvanani Jayaya Jasram Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Goloka Namni Nijadamni Tale Chatasya Devi Maheso Haridama Suteshu Tete Prabhavani Jaya Vitasya Yena Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Shishtista Tipalaya Sada Vasakti Reka Chayevi Yasya Bhuvanani Vibharti Durga Ichana Rupam Abhyasya Chitesta Tesa Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Siram Yata Dadi Vikara Visesi Yoga Sanjayate Naitata Pritakasti Yasam Bhutama Pitatasam Paitikar Yat Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Departure Deva Hita Santanam Abhyupetya Dipayate Vitetu Samanu Dharma Yastadri Geva Hita Vishnu Tayavibhati Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yakarna Narna Vajale Barisisma Nidrama Nanta Jagananda Saruma Kupa Adhara Saktim Avalambya Param Samurtim Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yasyaika Nisvasita Kalamata Avalambya Jivanti Loma Villaja Jagananda Nata Vishnu Mahansa Yasakalavi Seso Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Basman Yatasma Sakaleshan Jaisate Jasriyam Kiyat Prakatayata Pitatvadatra Brahmaya Esa Jagananda Vidanu Karta Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yat Pala Pala Vyugam Vinidaya Kumbadvande Pranamasama Esa Gnadi Raja Vignan Vinanta Malamasa Jagatreyasya Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Agnir Mahika Ganamambu Muruti Sasa Kalasta Tatma City Jagatrayani Yasmat Bhavanti Vibhavanti Visanti Amcha Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yaschak Sudesa Savitasa Kilagrahanam Raja Samasta Sudamurti Sesa Teja Yasya Gaya Brahmati Sambrita Kala Chakro Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Armo Tapapa Nijaya Sutayasta Pamsi Brahmadi Kita Patagava Teyasta Jiva Yadata Mata Vibhava Prakada Prabhava Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yastrinda Gopamata Venda Mahosvakarma Bandana Rupa Palabhajan Matanoti Karmani Nidahati Kinta Chabakti Bhajam Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yam Kroda Kama Saja Pranayadi Biti Vatsaya Moha Gurukora Vasevi Bhava Sanchintya Tasya Sadvisim Tanamapurete Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Shiyakanta Kanta Paramapurishta Kalpatara Vajramabu Misti Damani Ganama Yitoyam Amrita Kataganam Natnam Gamanam Apivam Sipriasa Kechirilandam Juti Param Apitata Swadyam Apichasa Yatra Siradi Bisavadi Surabi Vyasasuma Nimesar Dakyuvava Jitina Yatra Pisamaya Baje Svitad Vivantamaham Ilukuklo Itimam Vidanta Stays Antaksiti Virachara Katipa Yeshilu Shi Guruvastaka prayers Kija. The spiritual master receiving benediction from the ocean of mercy, just as the cloud pours water on a forest fire to extinguish it, so the spiritual master delivers the materially afflicted world by extinguishing the blazing fire of material existence. However, from my respectful base unto the lotus feet of such spiritual master, who is an ocean of auspicious qualities, chanting the holy name, dancing, ecstasy, singing and playing musical instruments. The spiritual master is always gladdened by the Sankirtan movement of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Because he's relishing the mellows of pure devotion with his mind, sometimes his hair stands on end. He feels quivering in his body, and tears flow from his eyes like waves are from my respectful basis unto the lotus feet of such spiritual master. Spiritual master is always engaged in temple worship of Shri Radha and Krishna. He also engages in such worship. He dresses the deities in beautiful clothes and on his dress and performs other similar worship of the Lord. Are from my respectful basis unto the lotus feet of such spiritual master. Spiritual master is always offering Krishna four kinds of delicious food, analyzes that which is licked, chewed, drunk, and sucked. When the spiritual master sees that the devotees are satisfied by eating Bhagavat Prasad, he is satisfied. Are from my respectful basis unto the lotus feet of such spiritual master. Spiritual master is always eager to hear and chant about the unlimited constant pastime on Radhika and Madhava and their qualities, names, and forms. The spiritual master aspires to relish these at every moment. They offer my respectful basis unto the lotus feet of such spiritual master. The spiritual master is very deep because he's expert in assisting gopis who at different times with different tastes and energies for the perfection of Radha and Krishna's cosmical loving affairs within the groves of Vrindavan. Are from my most humble basis unto the lotus feet of such spiritual master. The spiritual master to be honored as much supreme Lord because he is the most confidential servant to the Lord. This is acknowledged in all revealed scriptures and followed by all authorities. Therefore, I offer my respectful basis unto the lotus feet of such spiritual master who is the bona fide representative of Sri Hare Krishna. By the mercy of the spiritual master, one receives the benediction of Krishna. Without the grace of the spiritual master, one cannot even make any advancement. Therefore, I should always remember and praise the spiritual master at least 3 times a day. I should offer my respectful basis unto the lotus feet of my spiritual master, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Srimad Bhagavatam Grantha Raja Ki Jai, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 5, Text number 25. Mahatatvad Vikurvanad Ahatatvam Vyajayata Karya Karana Kartratma Bhutendriya Manomaya Vaikarikas Taijasascha Tamasas Chetyaham Trida Tamahat tamasas chetyaham tridam. Mahat, the great. Tatvat, from the causal truth. Vikurvanat, being transformed. Aham, false ego. Tatvam, material truth. Vyajayata, became manifested. Karya, effects. Karana, cause. Kartre, doer. Atma, soul or source. Bhuta, material ingredients. Indriya, senses. Manamaya, hovering on the mental plane. Vaikarika, the mode of goodness. Taijasa, the mode of passion. Cha, and. Tamasa, the mode of ignorance. Cha, and. Iti, thus. Aham, false ego. Trida, three kinds. Translation by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Mahatattva, or the great causal truth, transforms into false ego, which is manifested in three phases: cause, effect, and the doer. All such activities are on the mental plane and are based on the material elements, gross senses, and mental speculation. The false ego is represented in three different modes: goodness, passion, and ignorance. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. A pure living entity in his original spiritual existence is fully conscious of his constitutional position as an eternal servitor of the Lord. All souls who are situated in such pure consciousness are liberated, and therefore they eternally live in bliss and knowledge in the various Vaikuntha planets in the spiritual sky. When the material creation is manifested, it is not meant for them. The eternally liberated souls are called Nitya Muktas, and they have nothing to do with the material creation. The material creation is meant for rebellious souls who are not prepared to accept subordination under the Supreme Lord. This spirit of false lordship is called false ego. It is manifested in three modes of material nature, and it exists in mental speculation only. Those who are in the mode of goodness think that each and every person is God, and thus they laugh at the pure devotees who try to engage in the transcendental service of the Lord. Those who are puffed up by the mode of passion try to lord it over material nature in various ways. Some of them engage in altruistic activities as if they were agents appointed to do good to others by their mental speculative plans. Such men accept the standard ways of mundane altruism, but their plans are made on the basis of false ego. This false ego extends to the limit of becoming one with the Lord. The last class of egotistic conditioned souls, those in the mode of ignorance, are misguided by the identification of the gross body with the self. Thus, all their activities are centered around the body alone, about the body only. All these persons are given the chance to play with false egotistic ideas. But at the same time, the Lord is kind enough to give them a chance to take help. From scriptures like Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, so that they may understand the science of Krishna and thus make their lives successful. The entire material creation, therefore, is meant for the falsely egotistic living entities hovering on the mental plane under different illusions in the mode of material nature. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Mahatattva, or the great causal truth, transforms into false ego, which is manifested in three phases: cause, effect, and the doer. All such activities are on the mental plane and are based on the material elements, gross senses, and the mental speculation. The false ego is represented in three different modes: goodness, passion, and ignorance. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So, to understand tattvam, that is material truth, we have to understand all aspects of the material truth, not just a few aspects or one aspect. So that includes the material world. Of course, Mayavadis avoid that by saying the material world is just an illusion, but not the Vaishnavas. They know that it's not an illusion, but it's temporary. So there's a difference between something that's illusory and something that is temporary. While it's temporarily manifested, it is existing. And even when it's not manifested, it is still existing in a potential form. So the material nature is eternal, but it's an inferior internal energy as opposed to the superior internal energy, which is the entire spiritual world, and also our souls. So we have difficulty understanding that because of material attachment and because of identifying with the material body. This can be overcome gradually, and it is fact. It's a gradual process. Why? Because we've been in the material world millions and billions of years attached to different types of bodies, so it's not going to be easy to break that attachment to the body. But it is possible by first and foremost hearing and repeating what we've heard on a regular basis every day. There is, in the Bhagavatam, especially from the second canto on, teaches the gradual process of overcoming attachment to the material nature. And how is that? Well, it's explained as the Pancha Upasana, the recommendation of 5 mental attitudes for the common man. And therefore, they can gradually develop worship of the superior. So, worshiping a superior is the beginning of spiritual life on a very low level, or a gross level. So, and this begins the gradual development of worship of the superior that may be in the form of fire and electricity, and then the sun, the mass of living beings, Lord Shiva, and at last the impersonal supersoul, which is the partial representation of Lord Vishnu. So this is taught in the second chapter of the second canto, Srimad Bhagavatam. We've already read this. This is to begin the gradual, progressive understanding of a gross materialist. So to bring them directly to worshiping Krishna is possible, but in most cases it's not possible. They need this gradual elevation. Otherwise, they're so attached to the body and to the false ego that to worship a person like Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead is too far-fetched for them. They can't accept that. And because they're living in a world of illusion of their own making, so therefore they can be gradually weaned off their illusory concepts. And the foremost illusory concept, of course, is to think, I am the body, and in this body I can exploit and dominate some part of material nature, or of all our material nature. So therefore, they engage in what I call impossible things to achieve, such as one impossible thing to achieve is to live eternally in the material body. But yet that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to find ways and means to live eternally in the material body and not be subject to the process of aging and disease and death. So there are people, and they're considered some of the smartest people in the world, that are trying to achieve this impossible goal. And then another impossible goal is to be happy through sense gratification. It's not possible, but yet people think it's possible, and therefore they're trying over and over again to attain such possibility. And then the third one that's impossible is to live on other planets although they're spending billions of dollars to do that, but they're not able to do it. And they'll be failing over and over again. And then there are other impossible things that they're trying to do, such as to make different types of things that'll be eternal. And nothing is going to be eternal in the material world. The only thing that's eternal is the soul. But yet they're trying to make other things eternal, like dogs, like human beings, and other things. So their whole lives are spent trying to do things that are absolutely impossible to achieve, but yet they're spending all their money and effort and intelligence to do those things. This is a tragedy. And they convince other people, the ones who are so-called most intelligent, they convince other people that this is possible and that it will be achieved in a matter of years. 2050, death will be optional, etc. All this is nonsense. But yet people believe it. So this is part of the illusion of the material world. So therefore, this gradual, elevation of such grossly attached materialists is possible, and it begins with worship of someone or something that is superior. So that's the beginning of the process of worshiping God or believing in God. So they start with what we call the Pancha Upasana, and that is for gradual development through worship of superior, beginning with fire and electricity, 1, the sun, number 2, the mass of living beings, number 3, Lord Shiva, number 4, and finally the impersonal supersoul, or supersoul or partial representation of Lord Vishnu, or Paramatma. Okay, so this is explained, like I said, second chapter, second verse. But when you come to the third chapter, second canto, second chapter. So when we come to the third chapter in Canto 2, there's further development where one actually can attain the stage of Vishnu worship or pure devotional service. And the mature state of Vishnu worship is it's suggested to not only understand the presence of Vishnu in the heart, but in the heart of all living entities. So now their scope of consciousness is expanding in a very, very dynamic way. So what is the whole process? The whole process of spiritual culture is aimed at changing the heart. The heart is the seat of emotions. The mind is the seat of thoughts and concepts and things like that. But the heart is associated with emotions. Why? Because the closer we come to Krishna, the more emotional it will become. That means it's not that we have no intelligence to discern things. Our intelligence is increased and our discerning ability is increased, but our heart begins to soften and we have emotions, and they're expressed as different symptoms of transcendental attachment to the Lord. So the changing of the heart in the living being in the relationship to Krishna, and one begins to understand that I'm the subordinate servant. I am not the dominator. I am not the seer. I am the seen, and I am subordinate to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. At that point, they begin to have these very deep emotional feelings for Krishna. So, as the subordinate servant, which is the eternal constitutional position of a living entity, they begin to progress in devotional service. And the whole process of changing the heart is exhibited by gradual detachment from the sense of material enjoyment by a false sense of lording it over the world, and an increase in the attitude of rendering loving devotional service to the Lord, or vidhi bhakti. So that's what we're doing. We're engaged in vidhi bhakti, or regulated, following the rules and regulations in the service of the deity and the service of the guru. So these regulated devotional services by the limbs of the body, namely the eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue, the skin, and hands and legs and so forth, is stressed in relation to, and then finally, the mind, and which is the source of all the impetus for all activities by the limbs of the body. So the mind is controlling, the arms, the legs, the tongue, the skin, and so many desires are in the mind. So when we change the quality of those desires from sense gratification to serving Krishna, we begin to make real spiritual advancement. So it's expected that by discharging devotional service and regulated devotional service, one begins to manifest the change of the heart. And what is that? Well, if there's no change of the heart, then it is considered that the heart is like steel framed, right? And why is that? Well, because it's not melted even when there's chanting of the holy name and dancing. So, therefore, the beginning of the change of the heart begins with this hearing and chanting every day. Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam. These are the basic principles for discharging devotional duties. It says, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, Padasevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakyam, Atma Nivedanam. So everything begins with Shravanam, Kirtanam, and continues like that. And then, therefore, we begin to actually experience some ecstasy, and the signs of the ecstasy is tears come to our eyes, and when we hear more and more about Krishna, and we realize how fortunate we are to have met someone like Srila Prabhupada and devotees, and learn about devotional service and hear about Krishna's transcendental pastimes. This is all blessings of the Lord, and it begins to melt the heart with emotional feelings of love and devotion. So then, these tears in the eyes, the hair standing on end, these are the preliminary symptoms of bhava stage. And eventually, the bhava stage is right before the stage of prema, or pure love for Krishna. Now, there are some problems, however. If one's reaction, if this change of heart doesn't take place, then even continuous hearing and chanting of the holy name of the Lord, by continuous hearing and chanting the holy name of the Lord, then it may be considered that it's due to offenses only. In other words, there are offenses against the holy name. There are offenses against genuine devotees. There are offenses against the holy Dham. There's a whole series of type of offenses that we can commit. The ones against the holy name are the ones that we recite every day, but there are other types of offenses. The offenses committed in the holy Dham, and offenses that are directly committed against genuine devotees. So, therefore, we have to avoid these offenses. Otherwise, they become, let's say, obstacles to us actually having a change of heart. And this is the opinion of the Mahajans, such as Rupa and Sanatan Goswami and Jiva Goswami, that if even though one is hearing and chanting, if their heart doesn't change and it doesn't soften up and feel transcendental feelings of love and devotion for Krishna, it's due to committing offenses and continually committing offenses, right? So then, if the devotee has not been very careful about evading the 10 kind of offenses at the feet of the holy name, certainly the reaction of feelings of separation from Krishna will not be visible by tears in the eyes and standing of the hair on end. So this bhava stage, the one right before pure love of Krishna, is manifested by 8 transcendental symptoms, such as inertness, perspiration, standing of the hairs on end, failing in the voice, trembling, paleness of the body, tears in the eyes, and finally trance or samadhi. The nectar of devotion is a summary study of all these, let's say, stages of advancement in Krishna consciousness. And all these symptoms are explained very vividly in the nectar of devotion and other transcendental developments. Okay, so both steady and accelerating manifestations. But still there's a problem. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, or has critically, let's say, discussed all these bhava displays in connection with some unscrupulous persons or neophytes that imitate them in order to be recognized as genuine devotees. They imitate these things. And also not only Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, but also Srila Rupa Goswami has critically or has been very critical about people who imitate these things artificially in order to establish themselves as some kind of great spiritualist. So sometimes the above mentioned what's called symptoms of ecstasy are imitated by mundane devotees called prakritya sahajas, materialistic persons who are masquerading as pure devotees. But the pseudo-symptoms are at once detected when one sees that they're also engaged in sinful activities like smoking marijuana, engaging in illicit sex, and so forth. So although they're chanting, they're dancing, and they're imitating these symptoms of transcendental ecstasy, at the same time they're breaking the regulative principles, either 1 or 2 or 3 or all 4, and they're engaged in all kinds of illicit activities. So here we see that even though one is decorated with the signs of a devotee, a person addicted to smoking, drinking, or illegitimate sex with women cannot have all the above-mentioned ecstatic symptoms. But it seems that sometimes these symptoms are willfully imitated. They do it on purpose to make themselves seem important in the company of devotees. And for this reason, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur accuses the imitators of being stone-hearted men. They have a heart of stone or steel. And they are sometimes even affected by the reflection of such transcendental symptoms. Yet, if they still do not give up the forbidden habits, they are hopeless cases for transcendental realization. Okay, so now we see that these things can be imitated by nonsense people. And they are. There are people like that. I've explained that before. Now, there's something more important, and this is crucial for understanding how to be actually Krishna conscious. When Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu met Ramananda Rai on the bank of the Godavari, the Lord himself developed these symptoms of transcendental ecstatic love for Krishna. And but sometimes in the body of transcendental devotees, these symptoms are not manifested. Why? Well, Lord suppressed these symptoms because there were some materialistic brahmanas in the presence of Ramananda Rai when Lord Chaitanya was discussing with him pure love of Radharani and Krishna. And he suppressed them So sometimes you'll not see these types of manifestations of pure love of Krishna, because devotees will suppress them. Now this is opposite the nonsense people who purposely imitate them. Okay, so it's getting a little complicated. Why do they suppress it? Because they do not want to manifest these qualities in public. They usually only manifest them either in the company of devotees or in private. Now, therefore, real steady bhava is definitely displayed in the matter of cessation of material desires. So now we're going to hear 5 different symptoms that are not when you're not manifesting ecstasy in the normal sense of having a softened heart full of these transcendental emotions. But these are other qualities that will let us understand that someone is on that level of ecstatic love of Krishna. And number 1 is, it's called kshanti, that is completely stopping or completely free of all material desires. Then number 2 is using every moment of one's life in the service of Krishna, transcendental loving service of the Lord. This is called avyarta kalatvam, and this is explained in Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Lila, chapter 23, verses 18 and 19. Avyarta kalatvam, using every moment in the service of Krishna, and before that, being free of all material desires. And then number 3, eagerness for glorifying the Lord constantly. Eagerness for glorifying the Lord constantly. This is called nama gane sadaruchi. Nama gana sadaruchi. This is Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Lila, chapter 23 again, but verses 18 and 19. And then next, eagerness for glorifying the Lord constantly. Okay, we just mentioned that. And then next, number 4, attraction for living in the land of the Lord, or in a holy place, such as Vrindavan, or Mathura, or different holy places, or a temple. The temple is considered a holy place also. And this is called Pritishtad Vasati Stale. And then number 5, complete detachment from material happiness and pridelessness. So that complete detachment from material happiness is called virakti, and pridelessness is called mana sunyata. So one who has developed all these transcendental qualities, which are really possessed in the bhava stage, as distinguished from the stone-hearted imitator or mundane devotee. So, if a devotee is not manifesting the states of ecstatic love for Krishna, but on the other hand manifests this freedom from all material desires, utilization of every moment in service of Krishna, attraction for living in a holy place or holy land, complete detachment from material happiness. So there's a difference between stopping material desires and complete detachment from material happiness. Okay, so sometimes you'll see, like one time there was this one very prominent Vaishnava guru in ISKCON, and he was in his company of a lot of materialistic people. He was preaching to them, but at one point they were playing some kind of music, and he previously was very adept, very expert at playing the harmonica. So he got the harmonica and started playing along with the others. And there was a video of it, and when the members of the GBC saw this, they gave him, the advice that he shouldn't do a thing like that, because he went back into a material happiness type of mode, right? some people feel happiness, hearing bluegrass music, or different types of music and singing. So that's a mundane thing, right? So therefore complete detachment from material happiness, and then finally that pridelessness, being very humble and meek in the discharge of devotional service with no false ego and no false pride. So one who has developed these transcendental qualities is really possessed of bhava, is really in a stage of bhava. So here we have two criterions. One is something that is exterior and genuine, trembling, losing your voice, or failing in your voice, and tears in the eyes, and hair standing on end, things like that. And then something that's less visible, but even more important in a sense, and that is this freedom from material desires and using every moment in the service of Krishna, and eagerness to glorify the Lord always and constantly, and complete detachment from material happiness, and then pridelessness. Okay, so then Prabhupada says the whole process can be summarized as follows. The advanced devotee who chants the holy name of the Lord in a perfectly offenseless manner and is friendly to everyone can actually relish the transcendental taste of glorifying the Lord. And the result of such realization is reflected in the cessation or the stoppage of material desires and the other points that we covered. The neophytes, due to their being in the lower stage of devotional service, are invariably envious. They have a nature of becoming envious of other people who seem to be better achievers than them. And so much so that they invent their own ways and means of devotional regulations without following the acharyas. So that's all these bogus yogis and gurus in India. Each one, one comes up with hot yoga, another one comes up with silent yoga, another one comes up with active yoga, this thing, that thing. They're all coming up with a new thing, new way of attaining perfection. So, but they're not following the acharyas. That's the main point. So, or they make a show of constantly chanting the holy name of the Lord, but they don't actually feel any transcendental bliss. Therefore, in private, they're committing sinful activities because they're not getting the bliss from chanting and dancing. They're just doing it professionally. There was this one show in England in which they were chanting Hare Krishna. So the devotees sometimes would go in front of a movie house where they were showing that film, or they were enacting that play, and the devotees would be outside chanting Hare Krishna ecstatically, and the people inside would be chanting Hare Krishna to make money, And there was a big difference between the two chants. So simply imitating chanting Hare Krishna is different than chanting sincerely the holy name on Sankirtan. So these people were being paid to chant Hare Krishna on the stage, right? And the devotees are out there voluntarily chanting Hare Krishna to serve Prabhupada and Lord Chaitanya and spread the Krishna consciousness movement. Okay, so it says those persons, or neophytes, are in the lower stage of devotional service and are invariably envious. It's a carryover from their previous activities, where enviousness is a normal thing in the material world, unfortunately. But even neophyte devotees may carry over that enviousness into Krishna consciousness in the early stages of their devotional service. And they invent their own ways and means of following devotional regulations without following the acharya's recommendations. So they might say, well, fasting is very important, so we should do it every Monday and Tuesday. So there are people like that invent these things and convince other devotees that they should do it. Right? So therefore, the tears, that come into the eyes, the trembling, the perspiration, the unconsciousness or fainting, is condemned. Is condemned. But if these pretenders contact genuine devotees and hear from them and engage in their service, then they can get back again on the progressive march towards pure devotional service to go back to Godhead. So everything depends on receiving bona fide knowledge of Krishna consciousness from genuine devotee teachers or gurus and mentors. Okay, so this is a very, let's say, important thing. You can read this in the second canto, third chapter, 24th verse. Second canto, third chapter, 24th verse, where Prabhupada explains first the gradual system of elevation called Pancha Upasana, where you worship material things in the material world that bring you closer to Krishna. So, and the whole idea is to worship something that's superior to you. People with big false ego, they think nothing is superior to themselves, right? But now they begin to worship, let's say, the fire. So, like if you go to Iran, from ancient times, they have had fire worship. They got that from the Vedic tradition of Agnihotram, right? So worshiping fire or electricity in modern times, like Tesla, he was like worshiping electricity. He knew how to manipulate it and do different things with it. They're amazing things. If you ever read about his life, he was doing amazing things that was influencing the whole Earth planet, right? He was very, very advanced in manipulating electricity. Okay, but in a sense, it is beginning the process of coming closer to God. But he was like manipulating it and showing how he could do miraculous things. Probably he wasn't getting purified by it, right? And then there is worshiping the sun. So in Iran, also in their Parsi culture, they worship the fire. They also worship the sun. These are all symbols of material power that are superior to human beings, right? And then you can also worship all the living entities, because they are manifesting certain qualities that are amazing. So you have certain types of animals and certain types of human beings that can do amazing things. Or you can just worship the whole population of the world, right? You put it all together and it's a powerful thing because they're achieving all kinds of things, building big buildings, building tunnels and bridges and rockets and things like that. So, and then beyond that is coming to the super soul and understanding the existence of Paramatma, or the first of all the impersonal Brahmajyoti and then Paramatma. So these are gradual steps to raise people to transcendental realization, and then eventually coming to the worship of Lord Vishnu. Okay, so this is called Pancha Upasana. Then above that is people who are actually, through this worship of the Lord, they begin to manifest ecstatic symptoms. But there's a problem. There are a whole class of people who artificially imitate those ecstatic symptoms also. and chanting, dancing, swooning, fainting, trembling of the body, etc. So we have a whole class of these prakritya sahajas, especially in Bengal, but not only in Bengal, all over the world. Even in Christianity, Islam, you have people like that. So then how can you actually understand who is really has a change of heart and has become purified and is engaged in pure devotional service? Well, one is kshanti, that is, one displays no material desires or stoppage of all material desires, and then they use every moment in the service of Krishna, and then they want to live in a holy place. They don't want to live in a place where there's a lot of karmis, and then also they have complete detachment from material happiness, and also they are free of false prestige and pride. So then now this is another way you can recognize through their symptoms, their engagement in devotional service, that they are actually on the highest level of their heart has become completely changed, and they're on this very high level of pure devotional service. Okay, so this is to help us not get fooled by the prakriti sahajas who are imitating transcendental qualities, who also are chanting and dancing, but yet they're engaged secretly in sinful activities and offenses, right? Which is something you might not be able to see, but you can detect it by gradually they can't hide these things. Gradually you'll see it, and then you're not sure is this person bona fide or not bona fide. But the real bona fide people are the ones who are free of all material desires, always engaged in devotional service, very eager at every moment to glorify the Lord, and who are actually experiencing freedom from all material happiness. So one is not having material desires, the other is being free from material happiness, and being completely prideless, not having any false ego and not having false pride. Okay, so we'll stop there. Are there any questions? We're living in a very tricky world, and there are very, let's say, mean people that imitate things and try to establish themselves. They learn. See, that's why little knowledge is a dangerous thing. They can learn. Oh, well, if someone is on the highest level, they chant all the time and they dance, very enthusiastically, and then they faint, and then their hair stands on end, and they have tears in the eyes. So they try and imitate these things, right? And all of a sudden, you get bewildered and say, "Oh, these people must be, devotees on the highest level," but they are not. So then, how can you actually recognize? And on the other hand, devotees will subdue, or they'll control those symptoms of ecstasy in the company of non-devotees. So then how do you know who's the devotee, who's the pure devotee, who isn't? Well, now you have 5 points to verify if that person is a pure devotee or not. That is above or that is different than the manifest symptoms of ecstatic love. Right. Haribol.
Majority of people, Maharaj, they are getting fooled because of this
Yeah.
show off. They are doing the.
That's why Prabhupada and Rupa Goswami and Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, they went, what's the name of that? Anyway, they've gone to the trouble to explain, Vishwanath Chakravarti, they've gone to the trouble to explain these things in detail, because it's very easy to be fooled, right? Because there are rascals that will imitate these things, right? So you can't imitate cessation from material desires and using every moment in the service of Krishna and always eager to glorify Krishna, right? And then also to be able to be using, what is it? Yeah, being free from material happiness. That's a very, there's a difference between spiritual happiness and material happiness. It's just not happiness is happiness, right? So when you hear a certain type of mundane music or something else, then you get, you feel happy, right? So that's a symptom that a person is still not purified. Right? And then finally being prideless, which means you're friendly to all living entities. You don't have any enviousness of anybody. Haribol.
In spiritual happiness, person will be still happy, but like in material happiness, person.
But not like, for example, in India, they have these Hindus and Muslims chanting ghazals, right? And usually the message of the ghazal is sad, and then it,
Sentimental and emotional.
very sentimental and emotional, and people hear it and sometimes they're crying, they say, oh, this is so wonderful. You see, they do the same thing all through the Middle East because this was a Muslim thing, the lamentation, right? So, and then people feel some happiness by crying and feeling these emotions that are being expressed, like, my mother died and I am very miserable, or I love this woman and I can't marry her. They're chanting all these ghazals and all these type of very, very sad themes, right? And then people hear it and they cry, and then afterwards say, that was wonderful, that was very wonderful, So they're enjoying, or they hear this very enthusiastic music and or singing, and then and they enjoy it, right? But it's a mundane enjoyment, a mundane thing. So you have to be free of this type of mundane happiness, right? It's called virakti, detachment from material happiness.
As compared to spiritual happiness, it comes by rendering the service. Is that the clear? Into the better understanding of spiritual happiness.
Well, like, let's say you watch a movie, or you see, you go to a seminar, and you have these big speakers, and they're making all kinds of different points, and then people are laughing, there's jokes and things. When you start enjoying that, you're going along with them, right? Like, for example, I was once in this Indian program where some, I think the ambassador of India came, and then there were different speakers, and one person got up and spoke, and he made jokes about Krishna dancing with the gopis, right? It was very gross, and people laughed, right? And some people looked at me to see if I was laughing or not. I wasn't laughing, and basically, I walked out. So that laughing about someone making a joke about Krishna dancing with the gopis that laughing is material happiness. It's not spiritual. Right? So there's a lot of entertainers that speak and sing and say things and speak poetry or whatever, and it's completely mundane, and people enjoy it. Right? And you see this a lot, So that's material happiness, and that is something that a devotee is free from. Right? Haribol. Okay. Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakati Sadma Bandhamui Savadana Mate Bandhamui Savadana Mate Janara Prasade Bhai He Bhavatoriya Jai Krishna Prapti Hoya Hoite Krishna Prapti Hoya Hoite Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chitete Goriya Kya Arana Koriya Mane Asa Arana Koriya Mane Asa Shri Guru Charane Rati Aise Uttama Gati Ye Prasade Pure Sarva Asa Ye Prasade Pure Samasa Chakshudan Dila Jay Janmi Janmi Prabhu Se Chakshudan Dila Jay Janmi Janmi Prabhu Se Divya Gyan de Prokasito Divya Gyan de Prokasito Guru Karuna Sindhu Adana Janara Bandhu Prema Bhakti Jaha Hoite Avidya Vinasa Jate Vedega Janara Charito Vedega Janara Charito Shri Guru Karuna Sindhu Adana Janara Bandhu Shri Guru Karuna Sindhu Adana Janara Bandhu Lokena lokera jivana. Lokena lokera jivana. Ha Prabhu kora doya deha more padachaya. Ha Prabhu kora doya deha more padachaya. Ebeyas kusakji bhuvana. Ebeyas kusakji bhuvana. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Namo Vishnupadaya, Krishna Prestaya, Bhutale. Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Iti Namine. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Tagora Haribol, 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 Nitagora Haribol. Nitagora Brahmanandi Ki Jai. Jayo Vishnupad, Paramahansa, Pararajagachasta, Tarasattva Shesha Shemad, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Goswami Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Anatakoti Vaishnavindi Ki Jai, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai, Prem Sikho Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sivasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda Ki Jai, Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Samakunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhana Ki Jai, Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Mayapura Dham Ki Jai, Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai, Tulasi Devi Ki Jai, Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Ganga Maya Ki Jai, Jamuna Maya ki jai, Samaveda Bhaktivinoda ki jai, Nitai Gaura Premanandi. All glories to Sambhava. All glories to Sambhava. All glories to Sambhava. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Guranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Patita Pavana ki jai. Gaura Premanandi Hari. Ma Om Vishnu Padaya. Namaste Saraswati. The lotus feet of our spiritual master are the only way by which we can attain the pure devotional service. I bow down to his lotus feet with great honor and reverence. By his grace, one can cross the ocean of material suffering and obtain the mercy of Krishna. My only wish is to have my consciousness purified by the words emanating from his lotus mouth. Attachment to the lotus feet is perfection and fulfills all desires. He opens my darkened eyes and fills my heart with transcendental knowledge. He is my Lord, birth after birth. From him, ecstatic prema emanates. By him, ignorance is destroyed. The Vedic scriptures sing this character. Our spiritual master, the ocean of mercy, the friend of the poor and Lord and master of devotees. O Master, be merciful to us. Give us the shade of your lotus feet. Your fame is spread throughout all the three worlds. We take shelter of your lotus feet. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaur Premanandi Hari Bol. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna,